After sewing both shoulders of the front and back bodies together, we'll now sew the body section. For the body section, we'll start by sewing the ribbing. Use the current size 8 needles, 4 mm, for this ribbing seam. Place the two pieces with right sides, facing each other and wrong sides out at the ribbing edge. Lift the top piece and take the sewing thread from the front side of the bottom piece. Use half thickness yarn for sewing. Use the 4 mm needle to pick up stitches on the second stitch from the edge. This edge has a large chain stitch that corresponds to 2 rows. Pick up stitches on the second stitch, which means picking 2 stitches from one chain stitch. Pick every stitch in every row. Since we've knitted 28 rows, we need to pick up 28 stitches at the ribbing edge. After picking up the 28 stitches on the bottom piece, use a separate thread to pick up another row on the top piece, the one placed on top of the 2 layers. Using a thinner needle makes this easier. When picking up, also pick on the corresponding second stitch, taking 1 stitch from each row. If you're familiar with this sewing method, you don't need to pick up this row. The purpose of picking up stitches is to help align each stitch properly, when using the crochet hook to connect the thicker picked up row with this row. Pick up 1 more stitch here, then we'll sew with the crochet hook. Thread both yarn tails onto this needle. This row on the fabric piece is picked up with main color yarn, which is slightly thicker. On the top fabric piece, the wrong side row, insert the hook into the first chain space of the picked up row made with separate thread. Find the first stitch hole with the hook, then pick up the first stitch from the wrong side's thicker picked up row, place it on the hook, and pull it through to connect both fabric pieces. For the second stitch, insert the hook into the next chain space of the picked up row and remove 1 stitch. Then pull the next stitch over to complete 2 stitches. Pull it through again. Because there are needles and yarn here, it's a bit tricky to pull through. We can remove the straight needle from the picked up piece and iron it with a steam iron. Before ironing, the chain spaces here are very tight and hard to align. After steaming with the iron and removing the yarn tails, the chain spaces in this row will open up, making them easier to find. Once you're experienced, you can directly insert the hook into these loops without using separate thread, which makes the process much easier. Just pull the stitch from the needle over. Let's finish crocheting the ribbing first. Now the ribbing is sewn together, showing the right side seam. Then we'll continue with a 5.5 mm needle. Since the ribbing and the garment have different densities, the picking up stitches method also differs. Up here, we'll do the same, take the top piece and pick up stitches on the right side of the bottom piece. It's also the second stitch on the edge, which is a knit stitch and easier to see clearly. On the second stitch, pick up 1 stitch per row. When picking up stitches here, still pick into the first stitch of the large chain stitch, meaning pick 2 stitches per chain stitch on the second edge stitch. 1 stitch, 2 stitches. Don't miss any stitch. Keep picking up along this row. After finishing picking up the thick needle row below, we'll take the crochet hook to sew it together. On the second stitch of the edge on the bottom piece, find the corresponding chain space. Hook through the stitch on the thick needle, pick up the back side, then join with a slip stitch to the previous stitch. Continue sewing this row until complete, and use the same method for the other side. Now let's work on the sleeve cuff. Before starting the cuff, use a thinner needle and a contrasting thread to evenly pick up a row around the sleeve opening. First place the held stitches onto the needle, start picking up from the back side here. Transition the first stitch by picking up 1 loop in the middle, then the next one becomes the second stitch. On the second stitch, also pick up 1 loop along the parallel edge, making 2 stitches picked up so far. Now we've reached the second edge stitch. We've been consistently picking up the second stitch along this edge. The texture shows an upward-facing bell shape, so each large loop at the edge corresponds to 2 picked up stitches. Pick up 1 stitch in each loop within the second stitch. Pick up 4 stitches in a row, then skip 1 stitch before picking up another 4. Skip 1 stitch again, then pick up 4 more stitches. This means picking up 4 stitches out of every 5 rows. Continue working. This is the first edge stitch, and this is the second edge stitch. We've picked up 4 stitches, then skipped 1 space, which means skipping 1 row, and picked up 4 more stitches in a row. Following this pattern of picking up 4 out of every 5 rows, we'll pick up all the way around the sleeve. The total number of stitches picked up will be the stitch count for our cuff. The cuff should have an even number of stitches, since we'll be working knit purl pattern. Next, we'll work the cuff in the round using 4 needles to create a circular shape, then attach it later. This total number of picked up stitches is exactly the number we need to cast on for the cuff. I've picked up a total of 144 stitches here. After picking up all 144 stitches, we'll set them aside on a circular needle for now. Then cast on 144 stitches using 4 needles to work in the round. When we've worked 3 centimeters in the round, switch to 5 mm needles for the last row. Switching to 5 mm, size 6, needles, work 1 purl row on the right side to create that transition from thin to thick needles. This will show as 1 purl row effect on the right side. After working 1 row with the thicker yarn, you can cut the yarn now. Next, we'll sew the knitted cuff onto the body of the garment. Attach it to the garment. Turn the garment to the wrong side. Starting from the middle underarm seam of the sleeve, thread through these stitches first. Position the pieces with their wrong sides facing each other, the garment's right side against the cuff's wrong side. Once positioned, use the same sewing technique as for the collar. The underarm already has stitches left here, simply hook through these loops, then pull the stitch from the thick needle through, followed by the second stitch. Hook the stitch from the thick needle, through the loop on the thin needle, then slip stitch the next stitch to complete 2 stitches. 3 stitches. 4 stitches. Now we're sewing to the place where we picked up stitches with the waste yarn. Pull up the waste yarn to clearly see where we picked up the stitches. Then insert the hook into the stitch where we picked up with the waste yarn, and remove the waste yarn. After removing it, hook the stitch from the thick needle on the opposite side. Next, insert the hook again at the place where we picked up stitches with the waste yarn, remove that stitch, pull it down, then hook the stitch from the thick needle through to the garment piece, while pulling through the next loop to complete 1 seam stitch. Next, pick up the neckline thread, insert the hook where we picked up stitches. Then hook the stitch from the thick needle on the opposite side. You can complete the operation in 1 step using the hook. Now we've reached the area where we've been picking up stitches evenly, the part with the pattern of picking up 4 stitches every 5 rows. We don't need to work stitch by stitch, we can drop 4 stitches at once. Because here we skip a stitch before picking up the next stitch. After hooking 1 stitch here, hook 3 more stitches continuously to complete a group of 4 stitches. Then we can drop another 4 stitches at the place where we picked up the waste yarn, forming groups of 4. When we pick up stitches here, we skip 1 stitch. Skip the stitch in front. 2 stitches. 3 stitches. 4 stitches. Dropping 4 stitches at once makes the process faster. After picking up 4 stitches, we follow the pattern to skip 1 row. Then move to the next row. 1 stitch. Continuous 4 stitches. 2 stitches. 3 stitches. 4 stitches. Using this sewing method, sew all the way around. The result looks like this. The collar clearly shows the same effect as machine sewing. With this sewing method, if you're not satisfied with the fabric piece, just pull the yarn tail gently and the whole thing comes apart. This method makes very convenient. Like this, it's. After completing both back body pieces, we'll now crochet the front bands. There are 2 front bands, one side has buttons, the other has buttonholes. First, we'll crochet the front band without buttonholes. Both front bands start with 11 stitches. Let's crochet the one without buttonholes first. Step 1. Cast on 10 stitches. After casting on 10 stitches, when working the first row of ribbing, add 1 extra stitch at the tail end, just like the machine knit ribbing cast on method, making it 11 stitches total. Knit 11 stitches up, then look at the front band, 2 knit stitches on both edges, left side 2 knit stitches, right side also 2 knit stitches. This side will be the right side, and the wrong side row goes like this. After the edge stitch, 1 purl stitch, same on this side, edge stitch followed by 1 purl stitch. After adjusting this side, it'll look more obvious, we're using this side as the wrong side. First step, pick up 26 stitches along the ribbing edge of the garment piece. The picking up pattern is, pick up 10 stitches continuously, skip 1 row, pick up another 10 stitches, skip 1 row, then pick up 6 stitches. Our ribbing below has 28 rows knitted, skipping 2 middle rows means we're picking up stitches from 26 rows here. Along the ribbing edge, we first pick up 1 stitch every 10 rows twice, then 1 stitch every 6 rows. After doing that, for the body section between the 2 ribbings, pick up 1 stitch every row. Here we pick up stitches from the second large chain stitch at the edge, picking up 1 stitch per row. From here to here totals 144 stitches. Then our collar has 20 rows knitted up. At the 20th row, we also skip 1 middle row when picking up stitches. The adjustment pattern on the garment, pick up 10 stitches continuously, then skip 1 row and pick up 9 stitches. So for the collar, we pick up a total of 19 stitches. These numbers indicate the stitch count needed on the garment. Once the garment stitches are picked up, we move on to picking up stitches for the front band. For the front band, we'll use a thicker needle directly. Collar picking, sleeve picking, and garment piece sewing all use this 5 mm needle. Then we use the 5 mm needle to pick up stitches for the front band. For front band picking, we use half the thickness of the main part. I'm working with 2 strands of yarn, so I took half the thickness. First, let's see how the front band needs to be sewn. Starting from the left side of the garment, with the front band right side up, sew the front band edge against the garment. Previously, we'd lay 2 pieces flat, sew them together from the inside, then turn them right side out. Since the front band is narrow, it only serves a decorative purpose at the back, so we keep the right side up, exposing the front band edge, and sew it against the front band. When sewing this way, we place the stitch picked up with the thick needle on the wrong side. We pick up stitches on the wrong side, where the edge stitch is a purl stitch. When picking, after lifting the wrong side, we pick from underneath here. Not picking from the top. Once the front band is positioned, we pick up stitches from underneath. First, we continuously pick up the 19 stitches for the collar along the front band. For the front band, no row is skipped, simply pick the second stitch along the edge continuously, one by one. Since we're picking up stitches on the wrong side, it might be harder to see clearly. We can flip it to the right side, and use the purl stitch to pick up stitches. First, we continuously pick up 19 stitches. The collar has 19 stitches, but the garment skips a row while the front band doesn't. So the 19 rows of the front band correspond to the 20 rows of the collar. Pick up 19 stitches first. These 19 stitches correspond to the 19 stitches of the collar. Next, we need to pick up the stitches for the lower section, which are the stitches on the garment. Since the stitch density of the garment differs from that of the front band, adjustments are needed when picking up stitches on the front band. On the garment, we pick up a stitch every row. However, here we first pick up 5 stitches continuously, then skip 1 stitch, meaning we pick 5 stitches out of every 6 rows. After picking up the 19 stitches, we skip 1 row. Skip 1 loop without picking it up. Pick up 1 stitch. 2 stitches. 3 stitches. 4 stitches. 5 stitches. I'm picking up stitches while facing the camera, which makes it a bit tricky to handle. Meanwhile, we'll place a stitch marker on the first 19 stitches. After picking up 5 stitches, we skip 1 row. Actually, this loop shows a row of purl texture, with the flared opening facing up. Follow this texture to pick up stitches, then skip another row. Pick up 5 stitches continuously again. If it's difficult to pick up stitches, we can use a crochet hook. We've already picked up 5 stitches. Use the crochet hook to locate the chain space we need to pick up, pull it open to see clearly, and skip 1 strand in front of this yarn. Here. After pulling 1 stitch with the hook, place it on the thick needle, then hook the next stitch and continue to the second stitch. Pick up 5 stitches continuously again, then skip 1 stitch. Following this picking up pattern, we'll pick up 144 stitches for the body section here. These 144 stitches are picked up on the front band. Once done, we'll add another stitch marker, then move down to the ribbing part, skipping 2 rows. However, on this front band, we need to pick up every row, meaning the 28 rows of ribbing correspond to 26 rows on the front band. Let's pick these up first. When we reach this point, we've completed the picking up for this section. Completed 19 stitches and 144 stitches. Next, we'll pick up the 26 stitches for the ribbing. For these 26 stitches, we pick up every row on the front band. This thick needle is tricky to pick up, so using the crochet hook method is easier. First, skip one stitch, and go into the front loop of the next stitch. Pull through a stitch and place it on the needle. For this ribbing section, we pick up one stitch per row for all 26 stitches. Meanwhile, we'll add a stitch marker at the position of the 144 stitches we picked up, which helps match them accurately during sewing and prevents mistakes. Since the chain hasn't been completed yet, when picking up stitches, once we reach the required 26 stitches, if there's extra chain left, we'll undo a bit of it. If the finished front band is too long, we undo some. If too short, we add more until all picked up stitches on the garment align perfectly with the front band. Then we'll chain off this opening. After picking up this row with the thick needle, we now have the correct stitch count. Then we'll cut the yarn, leaving a small tail for sewing. For the top few stitches, we'll use the invisible seam technique to finish off. Use our sewing needle to sew these stitches together. Thread the excess tail onto a sewing needle. When sewing, the first stitch we encounter is a purl stitch, so we insert from the front side for this purl stitch. Pull it through. Then the second stitch is a knit stitch for which we insert from the back side and pull through. First remove one stitch, then remove these two stitches. While removing, pinch it, and this is a purl stitch. We pick up from behind the first purl stitch. When encountering a purl stitch, we sew through two stitches using the knit method. After sewing two stitches, secure with our thumb, then move to the front, specifically the stitch before this knit stitch, where there's a carried yarn strand. Pick up the stitch where the carried yarn comes across from the front side. When encountering a knit stitch, we pick it up using the purl method. Another stitch completed. Now for the back stitch, we pick up from the outside using the purl method, then when encountering a purl stitch ahead, we insert using the knit method. Another stitch sewn. Move to the front. Now we pick up this stitch from the right side, then it's a knit stitch. We insert using the purl method. After sewing, we go to the back piece at this same stitch. This stitch and the front one, both pull up the carried yarn strand between them. These two stitches are moving. What we need to pick up is this stitch, and the back one works the same way. We pick up from the back when encountering a knit stitch, inserting from the front side, sew it through, then move to the front, pick up the stitch before the carried yarn from the right side. Meaning this stitch and that stitch first pull the middle strand, these two strands are moving. Pick up this stitch, then when encountering a knit stitch, we insert from the back side. Then from the back, pick up half of the strand before the middle carried yarn stitch. After picking up, when encountering a purl stitch, we insert using the knit method. After sewing is done, add one more stitch on the head, pick up this half stitch and sew it. Now secure the cast-off edge here as well. Pull the yarn slightly shorter since we still have one stitch left to pick up. Finish by adding that last stitch. Once that stitch is added, our stitch count matches the ribbing, 26 stitches. We picked up 26 stitches on the garment, and 26 on the front band. The middle section corresponds to this stitch count, 144 stitches. But our row counts differ. These 144 stitches equal 144 rows. The front band has many more rows than the garment. We're using a 6 rows to 5 stitches pattern, and this part matches 20 collar stitches to 19 front band rows. Meaning 20 rows correspond to 19 rows here. Now begin sewing. Once all these preparations are done, we'll start sewing now. Place the front band directly onto the garment. The purl row picked up from the right side is aligned with the front band, while the row with loops goes underneath. When sewing, simply pull the loop through the picked up stitch position. Position the thick needle parallel to the thin needle. With the front band in front and the garment picked up with the thin needle behind, thread the crochet hook through the first picked up stitch. Remove the waste yarn, then hook through one stitch on the thick needle. As you hook through, secure the yarn tail, complete one stitch, then proceed to the second stitch. After pulling through the loop with the crochet hook, remove the waste yarn and hook through the stitch on the thick needle opposite. 2 stitches done. It might feel tricky at first, take it slow, one stitch at a time. Unhook one stitch, then hook one stitch. Once you get comfortable, pull through multiple stitches at once. Unhook one stitch. Then hook one stitch. Unhook another stitch here. Insert the hook, unhook it, then hook one stitch. Once slightly more comfortable, I'll unhook these 3 stitches. Unhook 3 stitches here, remember this spot, then continuously hook across each row. 1 stitch. Make sure to find the correct position here. 2 stitches. 3 stitches. After hooking 3 stitches, skip 1 row. Then you can unhook all from here. If worried about mistakes, take it slow. Because we have stitch markers here, these stitches must correspond to those. First unhook this entire section. Since this is continuous, picking up, we'll hook it continuously too. Now the stitch count in front is correct, no mistakes. When starting to hook again later, we can mark a small section. I'll mark at the 30th stitch, then count 30 corresponding stitches on the garment piece. This way, when sewing, any mismatched stitch count can be spotted and fixed immediately. Use the same method to sew this front band on. This is the sewn effect. It might feel slightly tight right after sewing, but after washing and setting, the tension of the garment and front band will match perfectly. This sewing method looks complicated on camera, picking up stitches on the front band and on the garment. Some might ask, why unhook stitches picked up from the garment? Isn't that redundant? Actually, this picking up is necessary because only by matching stitch counts can we align the rows properly, effectively joining the fabric pieces in a circle. Once practiced, this operation becomes very simple. Since I'm working on camera while checking my phone, alignment isn't always perfect. After picking up one row like this, hooking becomes much easier. Because the garment has one stitch per row, you can hook directly across. After the front band is sewn on, we need to plan the buttonhole spacing. Once the buttonhole spacing is set, we can accurately leave spaces for buttonholes when knitting the other side. After completing the hem, mark it with a stitch marker first. Then place another stitch marker at the approximate middle of the collar. This determines the positions of the collar buttonholes and hem buttonholes. After selecting both end positions, fold these two stitch markers together. Pick a buttonhole position at the approximate middle. At this point, we've marked 3 buttonholes. Then add 2 more buttonholes in the upper section above the middle position. Just count how many rows are between the 2 upper buttonholes. Divide that row count by 3 to determine the spacing for the middle buttonholes. In my case, it's about 30 rows per buttonhole. From the first stitch marker down to the second is 30 rows, with equal spacing of 30 rows below. Everyone's garment length varies, so buttonhole positions will differ accordingly. This vest is relatively short. If yours is longer, you can use my 30-row spacing as a reference. Maybe 32 rows, maybe 34 rows, these 7 buttonholes are arranged this way. Next, we can start knitting the other front band. For the front band cast on, begin with 10 stitches using the machine edge cast on method. Leave the yarn tail slightly shorter. After spreading it open with your thumb and index finger, insert the needle through the webbing between thumb and index finger, twist clockwise, then place the thread from your thumb onto the needle, followed by the thread from your index finger. Next, bring the thumb thread over the previous stitch, from behind, gently tightening as you go. Because with this cast-on method, many people end up with very loose stitches underneath. If you cast on and knit like this, the bottom will also be too loose. So when casting on, after placing the stitch on your index finger, tighten the yarn from your thumb a bit. Then cast on the second stitch. While casting on, tighten the space below a bit more. Let's cast on 10 stitches first. Then knit the first edge stitch, and purl the second stitch. The third stitch is also a knit stitch. Slip the fourth stitch purlwise. When you have one stitch left, the loop tends to be loose. Bring the yarn tail up again. Here, pull out a new stitch and slip it knitwise. Don't just drop the stitch on the needle directly. We'll knit another stitch here. I twisted it, so this stitch might be a bit harder to work. After knitting this stitch, it's like adding an extra stitch at the needle tip. We cast on 10 stitches, plus the added one makes 11. Turn to the wrong side. When flipping, knit the first stitch again. Then knit the second stitch, so in the first row of purl stitches, we knit the first one. When turning at the needle tip, knit the first stitch again. Then when knitting downward, always slip the first stitch without working it. Knit the last stitch at the needle tip. The yarn tail at the cast-on edge is a bit loose, so just pull it tight to secure it. When starting to knit, always slip the first stitch without working it, then knit the second stitch. The second stitch is a knit stitch, alternating one purl and one knit. After completing 2 rows of purl stitches, continue with 1 purl 1 knit pattern until reaching the stitch marker position to make buttonholes. After knitting this row, when working the wrong side row, still slip the first stitch and gently pull the yarn to tighten slightly. Follow this sequence until reaching the buttonhole position. On this completed front band, mark where to place the buttonholes. When knitting the other front band, make buttonholes at the corresponding marked positions. Making buttonholes is relatively simple. After knitting the first 6 stitches, create the buttonhole on the right side of the fabric piece. After knitting 6 stitches, make a yarn over increase, then knit 2 stitches together, 1 purl and 1 knit. This creates a buttonhole. Then knit the wrong side row. On the third row, we have a special technique. After completing 2 rows, we reach the third row. This buttonhole is made with one increase and one decrease stitch, which creates a small opening that might be too tight for the button, so we'll use a special technique on the third row. When reaching the previously marked buttonhole position, bring the yarn forward. Normally this would be a purl stitch, but instead of knitting it normally, lift the yarn from below to create a slip stitch. After completing this slip stitch, the buttonhole becomes larger. This is the buttonhole technique. After finishing this front band with buttonholes, fold it onto the garment the same way as the other side, and sew it in place. For the front band with buttonholes, we sew from the ribbing upwards, which is the opposite of the side without buttonholes, that sews from the collar downwards. On this side, we sew upwards from the ribbing, and after finishing the sewing, we'll attach the buttons. Choose regular shirt buttons. Select buttons around 10-12 mm in size, and then this garment will be completed.